Good morning. Ooh, this is on. Good to see you all. We are on Facebook Live and our YouTube station and all those fun things. Today is our next to the last speaker until we break for the summer. We will not have Koinonia next week. We are celebrating Maiden, so I hope you'll stick around for the 10 o'clock hour. There'll be a celebration of Maiden McDaniel's ministry for All Saints before she heads out. We do have another speaker, though, June 5th. Ed Hosak from CCM will be speaking about housing and homelessness, and then we will break for the summer. Let us pray. God of all creation, fill us with a passion for justice and dignity for each neighbor in our community. Guide and support us through Koinonia to follow your example and your command, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with you. Transform us through your Holy Spirit to become conduits of your love and compassion in all that we do, so we become reconciled to you and your creation. In the name of the triune God, amen. Our speaker today is Ann Benfield. She's the executive director with the Cabarrus County Partnership for Children. She has an extensive background in education with a BA from Catawba College in elementary education, a master's in special education from Appalachian State, and an administrative certification from UNC Charlotte. The Cabarrus County Partnership for Children connects purpose, people, and provides programs in health, early education, and family support. She enjoys reading and working in her flower gardens, and she's joined today with her mother, and welcome. Ann will be speaking about the needs of our youngest children and their families. Please join me in welcoming Ann Benfield. We'll make sure that's green. There we go.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Great. It's such an honor to be here with you guys today. But before I start, I want to tell a story that happened last week that you guys were part of, but I don't think anybody knows it in here because I sent a letter, I think it was on Friday. You guys are very instrumental in the community, way more than I think individually you guys know. You're constantly listening to the needs in the community and coming forth and coming up with a way that you can help. Last year, you started helping me with a program called Duffel Bags of Hope, and we packed 30 bags, backpacks with all the needs for foster children that were teenagers from 12 to 18, and we gave it to them about 3 or 4 weeks ago to Department of Human Services foster care director. And this past week on Monday, I got a call from the foster care directors, and she said, "We need more bags, Ann. And this time we need them for children from like small, medium, extra large, and children. Because when we give them to the teenagers, 12 to 18, and we don't have one of those nicely packed bags, they don't really like it. So we want to have some for the little people." Well, so I pulled up my budget, which is private funds, because Smart Start, which is what we administer, and NC Pre-K won't let me pay for it. And I realized we don't have enough money for 30 more bags. I'll probably be able to do 15 or 20. So on Tuesday and Wednesday, I started preparing my order. And then Wednesday afternoon, I went to the mailbox, and we got a check for you from All Saints Episcopal Church. Jesus knew, I'll have to say, that I didn't have enough money, but it just amazes me sometimes how he just sends it in the mail. And it comes from well-meaning people that know that there's a need. And how did y'all know there was another need? Because I hadn't said anything to Reverend Nancy or Jackie Whitfield or anybody, because I really didn't know that that request was going to come in. And so that's just a little side note on, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening to Jesus and sending a check when you didn't know if there was a need or not. Because when there's a something comes up, he always tells you. So thank you. It's a real honor to be here today to tell you about our youngest children. I could go on probably for a week, and I wouldn't be able to tell you all the needs of our youngest children in Cabarrus County. So what I've decided to do today, when I got the call from Chuck Collier to come today, like, Chuck, I'm going to have to touch on maybe the top 3 issues so that we can get done in 15 or 20 minutes, because after that, they don't want to know anymore anyway. So that's what I'm going to do today. So let's see if it'll work. Where do I need to point this thing?
Okay, I can move it if that doesn't help.
You could just move it for me, please?
Yep.
To the next slide. Okay. This is very, very small, but I made you a very, very small handout too. But I can also send you we can also send you this in big print, like I have it, so I can read it. Up here you can see a lot of data. Some of the things I want to key in on are, because I'm going to come back to them later, is I guess the most significant is almost 34% of our children are overweight or obese. Spend a lot of time on the internet, on the TV, not moving very much. So we have a lot of unhealthy children between 12 and 4, which later transforms into later life. You see, we've got about 14% of 0 to 5-year-olds living with food insecurity. Our low birth weight is creeping up from where it used to be. Our preterm babies is creeping up. I have a theory on those, and we'll talk about them in a minute. And infant mortality used to be 2.8. In the last 6 years, it's creeped up to almost 6%. And 13% of our children are living in really bad housing insecurities. And thank God you've got Ed Hozak coming to talk in a few weeks. And then the ones that are living in poverty are the ones that I spend most of my days worrying about. Can you click it to the next one? I think our greatest issue in Cabarrus County is with child care. Thank God. Did you lose me? Can't get it back on. I'm sorry. Let me try it. I think it's my jacket getting it in the back, and I think I'm going to take it off. Well, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay,
There
cool.
we go. That's better.
All right, let me just hold this thing because I think I'm hooking it up. I think that the greatest issue we have in Cabarrus County right now is our issues with child care. We have a lot of information up here on child care. And I think the biggest telling thing is we have about 9,200 slots in Cabarrus County, but we only have about 41 or 4,200 children in child care. And the reasoning behind that is that we have empty classrooms in Cabarrus County because they can't find teachers. We only have about 1,000 teachers in Cabarrus County, where pre-COVID we had about 1,200 teachers. And it's significantly weighing on families that want to work and they can't find child care. The good news is All Saints just opened a center last October, and you guys filled it up in record time. When I was working with your director, Waynette Taylor, we thought you would only be able to fill maybe 68 children in that space. But we rearranged some rooms. with infants and toddlers, and now I think you have 70 or 71 children. We're hoping to go up to 72 because the greatest need in Cabarrus County is infant and toddler space. So that's significant, that you're always trying to figure out a way that you can serve better in the community. And I think the second issue in Cabarrus County in the child care centers is, we always had a few children that have severe extreme behaviors. But since COVID, some of the behaviors that we are seeing are so extreme and so severe that the teachers are just leaving and not coming back the next day. They just can't manage, they can't handle, they're just not equipped to manage the needs of the children. The other thing that plagues us on that end is the exceptional children department with Kannapolis City Schools and with Cabarrus County Schools is so very far behind in doing evaluations that they have to wait 6 to 9 to 12 months for a child to be evaluated. So all these children that are in NC Pre-K this year that are going to kindergarten next year are probably not going to be tested. And they're going to hit the doors of kindergarten, and it's going to be awful for that whole year for that group of children too. The one thing that we've suffered with NC Pre-K this year is that we've had a lot of parents that's pulled their children out because of the behaviors of some of the other children, worried about that their children can be hurt. And North Carolina has a rule that we can't suspend these children and we can't exclude them. So it makes it a little bit difficult when we can't do those things, but now the Division of Child Development and Early Education is actually relooking at that policy because of the behaviors of the children. Can you flip it to the next one, please? Like I said before, the main issue with the child care centers is staffing. No one wants to work in child care anymore. And if they do accept positions, they don't come to work. They just don't show up, or they don't come to interviews, or they might be 2 hours late or 3 hours late, which leaves the center in jeopardy of being out of ratio, which is a really big no-no in the state of North Carolina. The pay is very low. And the state of North Carolina requires a lot of education, an associate's degree in education to be a child care teacher, and then they have no benefits. So I can tell you the nightmares that I lived through in trying to keep them all to work during COVID, and none of them had any insurance, and they were all getting COVID. It was quite interesting trying to find them a place to go when they don't have insurance. And then I said the severe behaviors of the children. Administrator and teacher burnout is significant because since nobody works and they're open 12 to 14 hours a day, then the teachers that come in the morning at 6 o'clock have to work till 6 in the evening, and that means 12, 14-hour days after they clean up, come in early, get their stuff ready, and then clean up in the evening to be ready for the next morning and to hit the ground running at 6 o'clock. So a lot of them are just completely worn out. They just can't do it anymore. And these are people that have been doing it for 20 plus years. The other thing that disturbs me more than I can tell you is a lot of our providers that have been doing it for 20, 25 years, they're teachers in the classroom, because of the children's severe behaviors, are acting inappropriately towards a child and possibly sitting them down hard on a mat or whatever, and then the parents are calling the police and having them arrested, and then they get fired, immediately terminated because of child abuse. And it's very, very hard because we know, and it's documented, that that child has been exhibiting severe extreme behaviors. But was it appropriate for that person to do that? Absolutely not. Absolutely. I'll be the first one to say we don't abuse children, but there needs to be more supports out there for child care providers, and that's been a real hard dilemma for me. The other issue that you guys all know is the cost of child care is really expensive. And parents can't afford it. And providers feel like they can't increase it, the tuition costs, because the parents just can't afford it. So they struggle with, should I charge more? And if I charge more, I might be able to pay my teachers more. But then if I charge more, then my parents are not going to be able to afford it, and they're not going to have care. And then the issue, a really big issue in the county, is that we have child care subsidy, and you know it pays for slots of children that can't afford child care. We have 174 open slots in Cabarrus County. Parents have got a voucher to take to the child care to pay for their child care, but there's no open slots. So probably all that money that's out there for subsidy is going to go back to the state of North Carolina. And then next year, we all know when money goes back to Raleigh, we might not get it next year. So I'm like totally out of my mind every few weeks checking with the Department of Human Services going, how many open slots do we have this week? Because I'm calculating in my brain how many millions we might not see next year, and next year we might have capacity, which is always difficult for me. Anytime you give money back to Raleigh and it doesn't get to stay in Cabarrus County, Ann loses sleep over it because I know I might not get it back the next time. Can you flip to the next one? I need to say something before the next one. I am not here to determine whether or not marijuana should be legalized in the state of North Carolina. I'm just telling you what I've been seeing over the last 18 months to 24 months in my job at the child protection team that I serve on. It's the child protection child fatality team in Cabarrus County. And whenever there's a child in Cabarrus County that dies between the ages of birth through 18, there's a group of professionals that sit around the table for a couple of hours, and we talk about why that child died and what happened, so that it'll never ever happen again. If there was something that this agency could have done or this person could have done so that that child didn't lose his life. So over the last couple of years, one thing that the chairperson and Ashley Shanley, the assistant district attorney, have noticed is that 38% of our infants that have died in Cabarrus County in the last few years were marijuana positive at birth. Now, when they passed away, we don't usually check that unless it comes back in the autopsy, and we never ever check to see if the parents were impaired in any way, because the police department or the sheriff's department never does that. But over the last few years, we've noticed that we have about 2 or 3 babies every quarter in Cabarrus County that die before 6 months old, and it's usually co-sleeping is what it says. And someone, or either the baby's covered up, can't breathe, and it's suffocation is really what happens when we get to the bottom of it and we read all the documents and everything that goes into an investigation of a baby's death. So we've stopped talking about it being co-sleeping and talking about possibly it could be impaired sleeping. Now, Paula, Ashley, and I have raised this up to the state of North Carolina, and we made a presentation about 2 months ago to all the fatality teams in North Carolina. And it was just eye-opening to me that almost every one of them on that Zoom call, and there was probably about 68, 70 people, that happens in my county. That happens in my county. But you know what? We don't collect that data. Well, to be perfectly honest, we didn't either. But when we started seeing the pattern of 2 to 3 deaths every quarter, and we couldn't figure it out, we made the folks at the Cabarrus Health Alliance go back and pull all that data to tell us, were they marijuana positive at birth? Because we were trying to figure out what link is there. The only thing I can tell you about marijuana is it impairs you. It's not great for babies. Low birth weight can cause developmental delays, can cause preterm births. You saw in the previous data that those have creeped up over the years. Now, I don't have any data, I don't have any proof. The state's never really researched this, is what we've heard from the folks in Raleigh. But we've got them twirling in space in Raleigh trying to figure out what's going on. And maybe, just by our questions being asked, maybe we will get some more information and some more data to try to figure out what's going on. I know all of you guys have heard over the years of sudden infant death syndrome. They don't use that term anymore. It's unsafe sleep because babies are being suffocated. We've had maybe one, maybe two every once in a while that are totally unexplainable sudden infant death. But when you suffocate a baby by holding them on a recliner and shoving their face down the side of the recliner with their face up against the recliner, that's impaired sleep. How didn't you feel that baby that fell off your chest and went down in the side of the recliner? So there's just a lot of stuff that I don't know, but I can tell you that this one keeps me awake. And if you've got any ideas on what else we could possibly do besides education, it's what we've tried. Thank God for Atrium Health. We provided, and you actually purchased some of our safe sleep books. Doesn't mention marijuana in there, though, because nobody even talks about that. We've done brochures. The hospital's done some amazing flyers about unsafe sleep. You show the videos right before the baby's released and stuff like that. So education is, I think, the only thing that we can provide in our community. The next one I want to touch on really quickly. Some of you have probably heard about our SUN project in Cabarrus County. Our SUN project in Cabarrus County is our substance use network. And it's a regional level collaborative system of care for pregnant mothers that are in substance use. And substance use is opioids, any kind of opioids, doesn't include marijuana. It's anything extremely addictive, could be meth, and stuff like that. And we work with the mother and the mother-baby dyad. We've started it in Cabarrus County, and we've been up and running for 3 years at the Cabarrus Health Alliance, but we're trying to expand it over into Rowan and Stanley counties because we want healthy, safe babies with their healthy, safe mother. This program has totally exceeded all my expectations in keeping mothers and babies together. All you need to do is see one mother and her baby thriving with medication assistance therapy. We get the mother when she's pregnant. Dr. Russell Suda is the doctor that manages the care at the Cabarrus Health Alliance. We place the mother on, she has to stay on opioids, but we provide buprenorphine, methadone, the treatments to keep her stable, to keep her from not going to the streets to get heroin or fentanyl or something very, very dangerous to the baby. And we manage her pregnancy through the pregnancy. I will say, since we started 3 years ago, 96% of our babies have been born full term, almost full term, at 36, 37 weeks, healthy. We haven't had one of our babies die. We've cut the length of stay at Atrium Health from 17, 18 days down to 5 or 6 days because Dr. Douglas Dodd at Atrium Health has this new way of handling opioid-addicted babies called Eat, Sleep, and Console, where we provide eating on demand, sleeping on demand, and consoling. And the consoling comes from the mom. what we're dosing these babies in instead of NICU, high stimulation, really noisy, into the quietness of a room at Jeff Gordon Hospital with low lights, mom soothing with the assistance of the nurses in Jeff Gordon to teach the mom how to manage this baby. Because we know this baby is going to be born dependent. We know this baby is going to be highly sensitive. But the mom is trained right there in the hospital in those 5 or 6 days that they stay. Also, we're not dosing, I would say the majority of the babies are not being dosed with morphine because they don't need it, which is being magical. I think it's just amazing how everything all lined up for our project. With Dr. Doug Dodds at Atrium being there to say, hey, I've got this really cool way that we could work with the babies and moms with Eat, Sleep, and Console. I've got Dr. Suda, who's absolutely amazing. And this crazy woman who works for the partnership that's trying to figure out how she can get the babies before they're born, because it feels like to me, after 45 years in education, until I can figure out how to fix the mom, I'm not going to be able to fix the next generation. But I've watched this one work, and I really, really hope that we're going to be able to get it into Rowan and also into Stanley. But I guess the one thing I want to educate the community in is substance use is a chronic disease. It really, really is. And we treat diabetes, we treat heart disease, we treat all this stuff. But it's so hard to get the medication for the moms, to have medication-assisted therapy when they're in addiction. And that's one of the things that we're working really hard now in the SUN project, to work with the pharmaceutical companies and the pharmacies to make it easier for these scripts to be filled, which is right now what's really plaguing us a lot. Last thing I'm going to touch on really quickly, if you could flip it, please. Come on the next one. Cool. Won't take me long for this one because you're going to hear about this next time. I think it's really important for you to know that there's only one family room for emergency housing in Cabarrus County, and that's at the Salvation Army shelter. But thank God for the Center of Hope at the Salvation Army. Hopefully the new facility will be available in 2023. Talk to Josh and Amanda constantly about the new, and I've been over there 3 times within the last 2 months just to look to see it really being built, y'all. And it's really big, and they've got some of the rooms sectioned off, and I'm just so excited because there's going to be more space for our families in this one. Hopefully 7, 8 family rooms, which is not going to be enough, but at least it's a start. And the other thing that plagues us a lot is transportation. We have a lot of families that don't have access to doctor's appointments, to preschool. We have lots of open slots in NC Pre-K, but we have no transportation because county schools won't provide it, and the child care centers can't afford it, and so the children just stay at home. Head Start doesn't provide transportation. The child care centers don't provide transportation. So if you're a child under 5 and you don't have access to somebody being able to bring you to early childhood, it just never happens. So those are 2 things that are real issues. Next one, please. Almost done. So Chuck told me to tell you what you could do. Y'all probably thought I was going to stand up here and tell you to send me a lot of money. No, not really. I just think that it's very important for people to be informed and to be able to share information. Because child care is such a big issue, it's going to have to be handled by state government and the federal government. Because I don't care how much money you guys as a faith community would pump into it, it's not going to be enough. You can see the price tags that's been estimated by NC Child in North Carolina. To make child care accessible, it's an estimated $73 million to the state budget, which is probably never going to happen in this biennial. Staffing up in early childhood, a wages program is a supplemental service to pay like bonuses to child care providers twice a year would cost about $36 million. To expand it to 100 counties but it would be great to actually support more here in Cabarrus County because the partnership does not have enough money to fund it completely. We're trying very, very hard, but we don't have that much state Smart Start money. So I think that number that's 636 to expand it in all the counties where it's not would probably be closer to 100 million. Because I know how much more we need here in Cabarrus, and I'm sure it's that way everywhere. And also making childcare affordable. The North Carolina did increase investments in Smart Start, NC Pre-K, and childcare subsidy this past year, but it hasn't been enough. They also have awarded childcare center stabilization grants, which are very, very important, and it's helped a lot. Actually, it's helped a lot here in your childcare center to bump up some salaries for folks. But the bad news is this is American Recovery Act funds that run out next April will be their last payments, and their payments are going to decrease over the next quarters through April, so they need to be prepared for that. And I keep telling them every Thursday on our meetings, your payment next quarter is not going to be as much. You need to be prepared, okay? But a lot of them are like, this money's been coming in like this for the last 6 months. They think it's going to keep coming, but next April, it's going to stop immediately. And unless the state continues this with state dollars, then all the funds that they've been trying to pay their teachers more is going to go away. So I really don't know how that's going to impact their business, number one, or how it's going to impact the families if they have to increase tuition. So the next thing, just being aware of this, state helping. If you know any legislators, anybody that might have access to the House state appropriations. I do know we've got some leaders here in Cabarrus County that are on the Appropriations Committee. Share that early childhood is very important to the economy of Cabarrus County. Would be very, very important. Coming from you rather than coming from me, which they hear all the time and they don't listen. I think they turn the other way when they see me coming because they know I'm a broken record. Next slide, please. Share information in the community that addiction is a chronic illness. I really see it like diabetes. I see it like heart disease. You don't spend much time with these women and not see that they're messed up. And it was probably 99 to 100% of the time, it was some kind of trauma in their life, or their mom was an addict too. Every story that we hear, it was my grandmother and my mama, and I guess it would go back earlier if we had it. Share information in the community about our babies dying of impaired sleep. That's a new word. I think we made it up. I don't really know. But I think there's a link there, and we've got to figure it out, but I don't know. It's just something I've been seeing, and I thought I'd share it with you guys because I thought you would appreciate it. Lastly, healthy lifestyles is very, very important to the long-term Cabarrus County. We do have the walking campaign. I'm sure some of you guys are involved in that. Atrium Health has a concept called 5210. That's 5 fruits and vegetables, less than 2 hours screen time, an hour of physical play, and 0 sugary drinks. Water is really, really important. And encourage family and friends to join the walk campaign. They're going to have a big one in June in Kannapolis. And that's really, really important to get the little people out there and let them run and play outside, which a lot of children hardly ever see outside except in the, maybe when they're in the child care center. And y'all's playground is absolutely beautiful. I just want to tell you how beautiful it is out there, and thank you so much for that. And I think that's all I have right now. If anybody has any questions, or if you could do the next, oh, you got my contact information? Martin, can I?
You talked about falling behind on evaluations. What's an evaluation, and what's the impact of either having one or not having one?
Ah, very good question. You can tell I'm a teacher. that y'all don't know. When you suspect a child has a developmental delay, you can go for children 3 to 5 to Cabarrus County Schools, and they're charged with child find in Cabarrus County, and they do a educational evaluation or a screening on those children, and if they so determine that there possibly could be a developmental delay, then they prescribe a complete developmental evaluation by a psychologist and the folks at Cabarrus County Schools. And then at that point, the child can be, quote, diagnosed, and then at that point receive services with an individual education plan. An IEP is probably what you've heard, so that those issues or those concerns can be addressed early. Because we know historically in education that the sooner we get to a child with a developmental delay, the better, because then at that point we can possibly remediate, because they learn so much quicker before they go to kindergarten or first grade. So it's a complete battery of testing is what it is to determine if there is a delay or not. Could be in speech and language, could be in sensory, or a whole lot of things. Anybody else?
Anyone else? You mentioned transportation. Is there a way for citizens to help with getting children to preschool?
That's a good question. I've actually talked to Cabarrus County Schools about possibly funding transportation again. And I just spoke to Kannapolis City Schools last week. The biggest problem in the child care centers is we just don't have drivers for the buses. So if anybody has a CDL license, would be willing to drive a bus for a child care center, they're looking big time. They don't have anybody reliable to drive their buses. Like I know at Kids Corner in Kannapolis, Danielle's got 5 perfectly functioning buses. She just can't find anybody to drive them, except the people that actually work in her center, which can't be away because she needs them there in the center. So I do know that there's people. Transporting in your personal cards, I would not recommend that because of liability. It would be great if we could do that, but in this day and age, I wouldn't recommend that. I would just say if there's anybody here that's licensed as CDL, contact me. That's my cell. You can text me or you can email me at Ann@Cabarrus Partnership, and I can hook you up with somebody at Primrose, Concord Children's, because last Thursday they were all talking, well, if I could just find so-and-so, I could do this and this and this, and maybe I could help with getting kids back and forth to NC Pre-K. Because a lot of people want NC Pre-K, but it's a 6.5-hour day, and when they get out at like 3 o'clock, they don't get off work until 5 or 5:30, so they need aftercare, kind of sort of like Kids Plus for school-age kids, and we don't have the transportation from the school to the child care center. So good question.
Anyone else? Lauren?
On one slide, you had figures like 73 million or 36 million. That is statewide, or is, and let me just point out, we currently have a budget surplus of $4 billion here in North Carolina, $2 billion projected next year. So I don't think it's a problem of money availability, it's a problem of priorities. And the legislature is the key.
Exactly. I think if you know anyone on the House Appropriation Committee, it would be very, very helpful if you would speak to them about the needs in this community only. It is a statewide issue. I'm not saying it's not. I just only really know personally here in, well, no, I really don't. I work with a group of executive directors in Smart Start. There's probably about 26, 27 of them, and I host meetings every month. So I hear everybody talk about their issues, but yeah, it's statewide. But yeah, those numbers are statewide, but I know the wages one is not enough because they want to put it in the counties that don't have it. But I can tell you that I have it here, and I'm paying close to $200,000 a year, and that's not enough money, but that's all the money we have that we can afford to put there. So it would be a whole lot more if they would estimate it to be fully funded across all counties, rather than let's put it in the counties where it's not, is what the state normally does. But yeah, good question. Very good. You guys are sharp. I love it. Anything?
Anybody else? Michelle?
So have these employees ever had benefits? I mean, I feel like this is kind of funded through the state and government, that it should be those benefits.
All the child care centers are privately owned, so they opt to provide them or not. There's only a few. You guys provide it here at All Saints. That was one thing that county government really wanted, was for you to pay everybody $15 an hour and provide some form of benefits. But I would say the majority, we just did a survey of everybody, and only about 30% of them in the county provide some benefits, and some benefits they think is personal leave so that they can take off when they're sick. Insurances and life insurance, short-term disability insurance, health insurance is not provided. That's why we've been hoping that the state of North Carolina would change rules so that we could form an association in Cabarrus County so that we could do something through Smart Start. That's greatly needed. We also need places for providers to go to get their health certificates completed and their TB test, because those are over $120 when somebody wants to go to work in a child care center to get a health screening and a TB test, which has plagued a lot of the providers if they don't have $120 to go get that before they can start. And they also have to get a background check, which is not free either, so the providers have to pay all that. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into a hire, and then if they only last 2 days, then you start all over again. So it's a real big problem that they're suffering. I have a weekly meeting at 1 o'clock with the child care directors in Cabarrus County. So if anybody's got time to go on Zoom at 1 o'clock and wants to listen to the woes of child care providers, you're welcome to join me. I started in the 3rd week of March when COVID hit, trying to keep them all working and supporting them. And it goes they don't want to switch it to every other or once a month. It's let's do it every Thursday at 1. So Ann's there every Thursday at 1. Cheering them on and saying, yeah, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. So we can put you on the Zoom meeting and you can talk to them directly if you like. It's a great group of folks in the community. They're really trying to keep people working.